Hey everybody, how's it going? It's the Daily Shooter, and today we're going to talk about a bill that was recently introduced into the House that would essentially end the Second Amendment. I'm not trying to over or understate that. This bill would end the Second Amendment, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, before we get started, I want to thank the Firearms Policy Coalition very much for helping us support this channel. If you are not a member yet, make sure you go down in the description box, become a member, and donate when you can, because they are going to be leading the charge to protect our Second Amendment rights in the future. Also, make sure you check out what I call the most important link in the description box, which could actually end up saving you one day. So make sure you check that out down below. Let's get started. Okay, so H.R. 127, a bill that was recently introduced into the House. As a matter of fact, it was introduced on January 4th of 2021. This is a bill, like I said before, that would essentially end the Second Amendment in the United States of America. Now, I say that in all seriousness because the plans that they have in here pretty much read like a Democrat wish list. Everything that they want to do is in this bill and then some more. So what I'm going to try and do is explain it in simple terms and not go over all the legal mumbo jumbo that's in here, because it does get very confusing. As you read through, it jumps you back and forth with all sorts of penal codes and sections and subsections, and each one refers to a different one, and it's very hard to follow. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to try and tell you what this bill wants to do. One thing this bill wants to do is it wants to create a registry. So if you already own something, and we're not talking about just, specific types, we're talking about if you own any firearm, this is something that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to register it under this bill. You're going to have to provide the serial number. You're going to have to provide the model, the make, and you're also going to have to provide where and when you purchased it, which is where I see a pretty big problem, because most of us probably remember where we purchased something, but when we purchased something can be pretty vague. If you don't have the receipt anymore, if you don't have any documents showing exactly when you bought it, you're going to have to guess. And the problem is, if you don't have that information within 3 months of this bill being enacted, it's gone, and you could end up being in trouble with the law. As a matter of fact, they have listed here penalties up to $175,000 and 15 to 25 years in prison for some of these violations. Not only does it create a registry and ask those people who already own things to register them, but for those people that want to acquire anything beyond the point of this actually taking effect, you would have to go through multiple steps, like a licensing process. And that's why I would say that this effectively ends the Second Amendment, because once you have a licensing process to acquire one of these things, it's no longer a right, it's a privilege. It's a privilege that's granted to you by the government. And if the government doesn't want you to have it, they simply just say no. And therefore, it's not a right, it's a privilege. It's sort of like a driver's license. For any reason, it can be revoked, it can be taken away from you. You could even face penalties if something changes during the time period that you own that license. So again, it requires you to go through a licensing process. Some of the problems with this licensing process, beyond the fact that it's a licensing process altogether, is the fact that they require so much of somebody to obtain something. So if you want to get something that's like what they call their general license, which would be like hunting rifles or something like that, right? Something that's like considered by them a general license. If you want to get that, you have to go through things like 24 hours worth of training. Okay, you have to go through 24 hours worth of training, which you're going to have to pay for. Then they want you to get $800 of liability insurance that's provided by the government. So again, you're going to have to give the government $800 for this liability insurance. Then you're going to have to go through even more steps and more hoops just in order to acquire that license. Also, one of the things that they're proposing here is that you would have to meet with a licensed psychologist, and that psychologist would then have to clear you before that license would actually be approved. If they actually mention in here some of the things that would immediately disqualify you, and one of the things that surprised me was that simple depression is a disqualifier, and recent signs of alcoholism is an immediate disqualifier amongst a bunch of other things that they have on there. So if a psychologist sees that you were diagnosed with mild depression, that could immediately disqualify you from getting a permit. That's one of the things that the psychologist is going to look for. So you're talking about time, training, money, insurance, background checks, all this paperwork and the hoops that you have to go through just in order to acquire that license. Now, it bumps up even more if you're looking to get something that they consider to be military style, right? If you want to get something that's military style, they bump it up even more. You got training, you got insurance, but guess what? That psychologist now is able to peer even more into your life. So what they do is they take the psychiatric interview and then they extend that by allowing the psychologist to then interview anybody that lives in your immediate residence. So if you have roommates, if you're married with a family and grown kids, that psychologist can then interview all of those people in your residence. But guess what? They can also interview people who knew you prior, like let's say your ex-wife. It even says in there your ex-spouse can be interviewed. And if you see, or if the psychologist sees any type of sign that you may have, had a mental problem or been in trouble prior to the date that you actually filled out this form to get your certificate, that could be a disqualifier as well. And we all know that exes typically don't like us very much. I mean, that's the reason that you're not together to begin with. So who's to say that that ex wouldn't be spiteful and just do it out of pure spite? So again, they can interview you, the people that you live with, and your exes. And again, disqualified just based on that. So we have registration, we have mental background checks, $800, all these different things, and that's not even it. Let me go ahead and tell you what's next. Okay, so to add on top of that, not only does it require the registration and everything else, but it also seeks to create a database of owners. So after you register, it's going to add you, all of your information, your address, personal info, everything that you own is all going to be searchable on a database. But get this, that's not even the end. That database is going to be searchable by the public. So anybody that has your name or knows a little bit of your information will be able to look that up, find your address, find all of your information, and also know exactly what property you have. How could that end up bad, right? I mean, somebody who has a vendetta against you could simply look you up and find a way maybe to get you in trouble. So again, it's not just a database, but a searchable database by the public and the government for any particular reason. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about loaning it. You want to loan it to somebody, you want to let them use it for a day or for a few hours, whatever the case is. You actually have to send a letter, an application to the Attorney General, letting them know who you're going to be loaning it to, all their information as well, the term of which the loan is going to happen. So if it's going to be 3 hours, 3 days, or whatever the case is, you have to let the Attorney General know that that is your plan. Then the Attorney General is supposed to read this, supposed to go over it, and then approve or deny it, and then send you a letter back whether or not your loan has been approved. So you would actually get a letter from the Attorney General's office stating that, okay, it's okay to loan it to that particular person for this specific window of time that you mentioned, barred that that person doesn't have any of the pre-disqualifying features that we mentioned in any of these other subsections. So again, the Attorney General is going to decide who you can let use it for a little bit. Now, if you thought it couldn't get any worse, you were wrong. I was wrong. I was reading through this and just being surprised by every single one of these things. I'm going to say this has a very low chance of passing, even with control over the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. I'm going to say even with the perfect storm, this is still going to have a hard time passing. It's just so extreme that I don't see it actually going anywhere. But because the political landscape is so different from what it used to be, we can't ignore things like this. We can't just let things like this go because they sound so ridiculous. There's possibly, no way that this could actually happen. We have to treat every single one of these as if it could happen. And we have to, let people know that this is not something that we're going to stand by and let fly, right? So we still have to write the same emails, call the same people, and let them know that, hey, this doesn't work for us, regardless of how absolutely insane it might sound and over the top. So we have 3 different licenses. I didn't mention that. We have your general license, we have the military style license, and then we also have an antique license. So they didn't forget about you guys either. You have those old flintlocks or something that you want to display. You're going to have to go through this process as well. And guess what? They even want to know in the manner of which you're going to display your antique. So I don't know what happens if you deviate from that manner. So let's say that you say it's going to be in a glass case up on a shelf somewhere, and then in between your licensing period, you take it and you put it in a safe. I don't know if that changes the fact that when you put in your application, this is where it was going to be, and now it's not. If that puts you in these, different subcategories of what type of punishment you're going to get, but they're there. The other thing is they're not just going after, you know, your general and your military style. No. They're also saying that they're going over any type of ammunition that is over 50 caliber. Not specifically any type of specific over 50 caliber, anything over 50 caliber. I don't know if you guys have ever measured a slug or a sabot or, you know, some of these hunting rounds or, you know, shotgun rounds that are out there. They're bigger than 50 caliber. I mean, these things are huge, but they're not a 50 BMG. That's the one thing that they've been going after in the past, is just specifically 50 BMG. That's the one thing that they're the most concerned about. No, so what this does is it gets rid of that BMG language and just says anything over .50. That is their specific language in this bill. Anything over .50. That to me is huge. There's a lot of information in here, but so much of the specifics are left vague that the room for interpretation is so big that it could just apply to pretty much anything. And when they're talking about stuff here, they're not even talking about, you know, what type of case that you would use, like center fire, rim fire, things like that. No, it's just generalized everything. So everything falls under this bill. They made sure that they kept it vague enough where they could say, yes, that falls under this bill. Everything does. That's how this bill is worded out. So we have just a slew of different things that they're going after here. Now, this is one bill that I suggest you read for yourself, so I'll put a link directly to this bill down below. Also, if you want some information on some of the finer details, I'll also put a link down to the Armed Scholars video that he did on this exact same topic. This is something that I think we should all be talking about and that everybody should put out so as many people as possible know about it. So again, there'll be a link to the bill, there'll be a link to the Armed Scholar video, and there'll also be links to people who help support this channel. So make sure you check all those out. There's a lot of finer details in here that are definitely worth reading because if anything, even if this doesn't pass, it still gives you insight as to what they want to do. Again, it's a wish list. And if you look at this wish list, you'll have a better understanding of exactly where they are. So I want to thank you all very much for watching this. I really do appreciate it. If you're not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. It'll help me out greatly. Leave a comment, a thumbs up. All that stuff is very much appreciated. Thank you all again very much for watching. Have a great day.